You got to be kidding me. I got to do another one of these? You're telling me that somebody asked 3 questions and added questions on top of it? Come on. All right, let's get on with it. First question. Is there anything I can do to increase the sustain of a guitar? Yes. Seriously. You can increase the sustain of your guitar by putting in new frets. Oftentimes, frets or a fingerboard are kind of poorly fitted, especially if it's an older guitar, where the frets are a little bit loose in the slot, and it also depends on your guitar and where it was made. If you have a relatively modern European guitar, the frets on that are very, very soft, so you're losing a lot of that rebound energy in your guitar. And by rebound, I mean the motion of the string, basically where it bounces from the fret to the saddle and so on and so forth. By replacing the frets to the American style, which have a slightly higher nickel content and steel content, and probably way worse for the environment, but that's far enough away where I can't speak well enough to that. That will help. I've done this operation on a number of European-made guitars, and inevitably they all sound like they have a lot more sustain. So yes, if you can get a better, tighter slot fit in your guitar, then you will get more sustain. The other thing you can do is to fit a tighter saddle onto your guitar. Again, so that way you're not losing the vibrations between the saddle and the bridge. If it's loose in the saddle slot, you're losing energy there. You can also play with strings. Your mileage may vary. By that, I don't mean necessarily just put a higher tension on. Sometimes you actually need to decrease the tension, because if you've got too much pull on your top, that pull is going to be impeding the movement of the top and not allowing it to vibrate. And then I guess the last method, which is less fun from my end, but you got to practice more. So it might be a technique thing. Beyond that, get a new guitar. Call me. I live on Hilton Head Island. There are no luthiers who can help with setting a low action. Is it better to take it from the nut or the saddle? And my answer is start with the saddle, lower your action with that, and then adjust the nut as needed. Because sometimes if you've got a really low nut action and you take the saddle down, you'll develop buzzing. So you have to raise that nut just slightly, and you can just use a little bit of a business card or a manila folder if you want to raise it up. It's very simple. Otherwise, I like to start at the saddle, get things down there, and then bring the nut end down a little bit, and then, just go off a feel and make sure every string feels the same. How much do they cost to replace a stock nut and saddle for a better bone material? It's actually not as expensive as you think. I generally charge about $75 per. The nut is a little bit more just because I have to file the slots and whatnot, but it's like $75 to $100. It's pretty easy. Syntax lost. Your question actually makes sense, so maybe that's the syntax lost. Anyways, do you use a different neck angle sled for a flamenco guitar? And the answer is no, because when I built that, I thought about, flamenco classical and the different neck angles. And really what I do, because the difference is so little, is if I'm building a classical, I've got a little shim that's taped underneath there, and I use that. And then if I'm going with a flamenco, I just take the shim off. So, I actually built in a, because it's over there, I'm looking in that general direction instead of you. I built an adjustment into the neck angle, but I stopped using it really quickly just because it's easier to throw a shim onto that. What are my thoughts on French polish versus nitro? For me, it depends on the design of the guitar. That said, I generally prefer French polish over nitro for 3 very big reasons. First and foremost, I care about my health. Shut up, internet. Nitro is kind of nasty. I don't have a spray booth anymore. I used to. Not that I ever used it, but I don't have a spray booth, so I don't want to be doing it inside my shop where it's off-gassing and being gross. And I know that there's some waterborne finishes, but again, the particulate is still in the air, so I don't want to have to always be wearing a respirator. I don't want to have any of those nasty smells lingering in my shop, and I don't want to do it outside. I live in Chicago, so the weather is what it is. You know, it can, and the barometric pressure, if it shifts too quickly, will actually cause that hazing or bubbles or anything like that. So that's a variable I don't like. That's my first reason. Second reason, the environment. Again, see spray booth, see particulates, see all the chemicals. That's number 2. Number 3 is sound. For me, the less stuff that's on the outside of a guitar, the better it is. If you think about it like kind of like a car suspension, the nitro is a little bit of a softer finish in comparison to French polish. So you have this big, huge encapsulating, essentially piece of rubber outside of the guitar, dampening the vibrations, and you're adding extra mass. So for me, the way that I was trained to build and the way that I've essentially formed my ethos around building has been all around French polish. It's all natural. It's something that, well, I can almost say with certainty you've eaten every single part of it, and it's something I can do. I not wear gloves. I can work with it. I can put it down. I can go out to lunch, or I can take a phone call, or I can do a video, and it's just something I can work with, and it's very easy. It makes me happy. So for me, French polish over nitro all day, every day, unless, you know, you do all that sort of stuff. But for me as a luthier and as a guitar lover, French polish. How many hours do you think you save on a single build on account of all the jigs I have made? I don't know if you can see it behind me, but I've got a wall of jigs, which aren't dancing. So there we go. And I've got a bunch over there. In terms of time saved, I would guess probably about 12 to 15 hours. And it's something because I don't do it by hand a lot. I don't have the muscle memory. If I didn't use it, I'd probably whack it down to 10 hours. You know, that said, I've got a lot of stuff going on in the shop, so if I can save 10 hours throughout the entire course of a build process and deliver a higher quality product with more consistency, that is worth it to me. It makes my life easier, and if I don't have to think about something and just I can, you know, clamp it onto something and make a cut, that's a lot better for me, because then I can do the cut and then think about something else, not think about the cut and then make the cut with the potential of making a mistake and then having to backtrack. Thanks for that question. I had to think about that one quite a bit to kind of formulate a reasonable answer. I would like to ask if a classical guitar top should be perfectly flat. And the answer is no. No. A Ramirez makes their bridge perfectly flat. I've taken off plenty of Ramirez bridges from guitars. They come off perfectly flat. That said, Hausers and Tauruses and many other great guitars have curvature built into the underside of the bridge. Across the grain, you should see a little bit of curvature. Beyond that, you've got a lot of tension pulling on the strings, and so you will see a little bit of what they call bellying behind the bridge and a little bit of a dip. That's normal. It doesn't mean your guitar is going to implode. It's not going to collapse. It's normal. So, for me, the only thing that should be a straight line on a classical guitar is the string at rest. And that also means that if your guitar is a good guitar, you have no straight lines on that instrument. So, should a guitar top be flat? No. Would it be possible to build a guitar with modern dimensions incorporating that action adjustment gizmo that Brandon's romantic guitar has? Yes. That's a detachable neck. Herman Hauser used it. It's very popular in the Viennese style of guitars and that essentially pre-1850s style guitar, you know, Germanic and French, Viennese, so on and so forth, Austrian. It produces a good guitar, but I actually feel like there's something lost between the connection of the body and the neck in terms of sound. So, you know, building two guitars side by side, I don't feel that the one with the detachable neck has as good of a sound as it could. That said, at the URI Guitar Festival, my friend, he brought a guitar where he incorporates a different style of adjustment in the neck, and I really like that guitar. It was a great sounding guitar. He was able to figure out the way that the leverage works for the neck and the strings to make it highly adjustable in terms of that neck angle. So essentially he is building with that system, but just not overtly as visible as the other style. So if you like that, I'd check out his guitars. Gary Lee, he's got a great YouTube channel, talks a lot about the stuff that I talk about, and check him out. So I agree with your history of how flamenco guitars are indifferent from classicals in their build, but now flamencos tend to have straight necks instead of angled necks, thinner body, lower string action. If I were to build a flamenco, how would I build one? Have you built any? Do you take orders for them? Thanks. You're welcome. Okay, so let's start with this backwards. Yes, I build flamenco guitars. I love building flamenco guitars. I grew up listening to my father play flamenco guitar. The great flamenco singer Agujetas performed at my 1 month christening party along with Pepe Culata, and so I've grown up steeped in flamenco. For the depth of the guitar, that depends from maker to maker. Some makers really like that narrow body, which tends to give a little bit more of a brighter, punchy, percussive style sound, which is great. I've got a 1865-ish Sotoi Solaris that has a very narrow body. This thing is like, every note is like getting punched in the face. It's so poppy and brilliant and crisp and whatnot, but it has no sustain, it has no depth. That said, you play a great Rodriguez, those things, the bodies on them I think are about like yay deep, maybe a little bit deeper. Are we still in frame? Yeah, I think they're about this deep. Those guitars are also spectacular, but they don't have that same crisp pop as, some of these other really thin ones. So I think it really depends on what you're looking for in terms of the sound characteristics and the style of music that you are going to be playing. I personally like my flamenco bodies to be roughly classical dimension, maybe take off a millimeter or two just to get that little bit of extra edge on that pop, but at the same time I'm not compromising as much with the depth, and sometimes I'll make the sound holes a little bit bigger to open up the depth while still keeping it tight and crisp. So that's something that I like to do and play with. As far as the straight neck versus angled, there's actually 3 major ways of setting up a flamenco. One is the one that everybody still does, which is and this is going to neck angle. I like to lay the neck angle back a little bit, as previously mentioned, but that helps get the strings closer to the fretboard if you like that kind of style. To talk about the 3 different styles of flamenco guitars, you've got your modern style with the conventional relief, maybe a little bit less, so that way you can rattle it a little bit when you want it to be, but it can also still be lyrical. Then you have like a middle 60s-ish, 50s, 60s style, which is a very straight fingerboard. So that way it's just kind of rattly, but if you lighten up on it, it'll still play clean. And then you have the third style, which is my personal favorite, and I've built a number of guitars like this. The bass end is actually backbowed. I've got a 23 Domingo Esteso, named La Maravilla. It was used on one of Ramon Montoya's albums. That guitar, the neck is actually pulled backwards. And the really interesting thing is that it was very intentionally done. When I looked at the guitar, I thought about maybe I should give it a refret because it's got a back bow. And my dad played it, and he was telling me that this was very, very intentional, so that way each and every single note going up the bass side on the lower 3 strings rattles exactly the same amount. So there is no controlling the rattle. It's just there, and it's built in, and that was to accompany a singer. And if you think about the flamenco style singers, they sound like they've been smoking 2, 3, 5, 7 packs of cigarettes a day, not to mention washing it back with 2, 3, 5, 7, 12 bottles of sherry a day. So there's a lot of depth and gutturalness. So when you listen to it with modern classical ears and you hear it buzzing, it sounds wrong. But when you hear it in the context of the music, the singer, the plight and struggle and strife and toil, it really adds another dimension. And that backbone style is actually my favorite way to build a flamenco guitar. That said, if you don't want it, I won't do it for you. I'll make it like a, normal guitar, but I really like that kind of uncontrolled rattling. You listen to an old Sabikos record and you'll hear that rattle, that it's pervasive. It's almost like death knocking on the door right behind you as you're playing. And it's a really, really interesting and cool sound. So it's a feature, not a bug. Have I ever added a Bixby or Tremolo or a roller bridge to an acoustic? If I were to, how would I do it? No, I haven't, because I don't see the point. A lot of that is to get around friction, and a tremolo is kind of a way to bend the notes. And if I did it, I would probably put an anchor point on the underside and mount it much like a regular Bixby or a tremolo. But I haven't had a call to do it. I would love to at some point in time, but I don't think that that's in my cards because none of my orders are asking for that at this current moment. That said, if you want to experiment, give me a call, mention YouTube, you'll get $500 off, or shoot me a message down below. I'll take care of you. I mentioned side pillars that go from the top of the top of the top to the back of the back. In Japan, many people check for the presence of those braces to determine if the guitar has solid sides or laminated sides. Doesn't seem to be, Basically, plenty of guitars with solid sides and backs without side braces. I don't put them on. I actually find that from a repair standpoint, they make my job more difficult because they transfer where the break would have been, somewhere easily fixable in the middle of the side to one of the edges, because you basically have the strong lining, the strong side brace, and then a strong lining, and then a very little bitty weak spot right where the two meet. So if the guitar gets an impact on the side, a lot of times it directs that force to those two areas, so you get this run right along the edge of the lining on the inside, right at the top of that pillar, unless you fit them over, and that's a lot of work. I don't think that it actually makes a big difference. Actually, no, I think that personally, the side braces tend to make the sound of the guitar slightly tight. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. When I design my guitars, I take into account having a flexible side more so than a rigid side, because I if you think that your sides don't matter, you can do this at home. Take a piece of silly putty, slap it onto the side of your guitar while you're playing, and you'll hear a difference. So it all factors in, and it's all part of the design. I personally don't like them. If I know that somebody uses one of the guitar supports, I'll throw some in on the treble side, because people with guitar supports tend to bounce around. So I want to cover that base. Otherwise, I don't use them. What about top thicknesses? This is a crucial step for the initial voicing of the instrument. It's like your lungs, which will guide the breathing of it. So, man, you got 3 questions in. How do I thickness my top? Okay, that's an easy one. And this is your first question. I use a thickness sander. I'll join it up and then send it through my thickness sander. Takes off about 1/10 of a millimeter per pass. It's very, very slow going, but it's very controllable, very reliable. And my thickness sander isn't your typical drum thickness one. It's a belt fed. It's 18 inches wide. It's got an aluminum platen with an aluminum roller and huge sanding belt, and then downforce rollers that pinch the wood and force it through. I also have a drum sander, which I've never used, which has a conveyor style. I can't speak to that one because I've never used it, but I can tell you that my personal thickness sander, I can take stuff down to 0.4 of a millimeter very reliably, And under 3/10 it starts to get kind of dicey, but what's life without a bit of entertainment? Anyways, I use that. So second of all, do I apply the one thickness to the whole top, or wow, questions on questions, man, it's like a parfait. All right, or do I have different thicknesses for different parts? Depends on the design. There's some guitars where I like to have a flat top, like a standard flamenco guitar. I generally like a flat top. If I'm doing a Hauser model or a Fleda model, I'll tend to do a little bit of topography depending on the top, and at that point in time, I'll put my top onto a light table, which is essentially a LED ceiling light flipped upside down with a piece of smoked glass, and I can put my guitar top on there, and this only works for spruce. But as the light shines up through it, I can see where it's thicker or stronger, and I can see where it's weaker, because it shows up in different colors of red. And then I'll actually use a piece of cardboard around it so I'm not completely blinded, because it's kind of like looking into the briefcase from Pulp Fiction the entire time you're working on it. All right, do I have a range of thicknesses for the top from which millimeter to which millimeter? Yes. Flamenco guitars can be as thin as 1.5 millimeters. I've seen Tauruses down to 1.4 millimeters. I have seen Hausers up to 3.5 millimeters. I know, that's a lot. So yeah, let's go with the answer of 1.5 millimeters to 3 millimeters. I think the number you're actually looking for is, in modern guitars with most modern builds, 2.2 to 2.3 is going to be considered a thick top. 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 is considered a thin top, and we do a lot of playing in that. Now, what you forgot to ask, I'm going to give you a bonus question, because you got 3 questions with 3 extra questions in those questions. I'm going to give you one more. Don't say I never give you anything. What matters is flexing. You know, when you take your top and you have the grain pointing in this direction, I like to flex it this way and then rotate it 90 degrees and flex it this way. And every single piece of wood that I use feels different. And I have a lot of sequential tree pieces, and each one feels slightly different. It's going to have a slightly different tap tone. So, you know, if you're building to a number, that's great. Numbers work really, really well for a lot of guitars. If you want to build a great whatever copy, find a great set of plans, follow it to the number. You'll be about 85% of the way there without any issues. The magic happens in that last 15%, which is a lot of the skill and experience of being able to feel a soundboard as you flex it. So thank you. I actually really liked all of those questions, and in fact, it could even become a full video, so stay tuned. I might just do that. The last and final question, which isn't a question, came from the $410,000 video from the University of Rhode Island, where the Texas Guitar Quartet masterfully played 4 guitars totaling $410,000 in one very tiny room. I was very, very lucky to be in there. It was one of the most incredible sounds and performances I've ever heard in my life. To you who said, not worth it, totally worth it. All right, thanks for watching. Please keep sending in your questions. I love them. Comment them down below. Like, subscribe. For $500 off the purchase of one of my new guitars, use promo code YouTube. That's that's a pretty hefty chunk right there. And I'll see you next time. Keep building.